Hello and welcome to my video blog. Thank you very much for joining me. My name is Chukwuemeka Ekowa. You can look me up more on ekowa.com. Now, in my previous video blogs, I've introduced myself, discussed a bit about what brought me to this point where I feel I can share my knowledge and understanding with people who are at this point in their lives considering a career in education, those who are already educators, long-term educators indeed, sort of to help them rekindle those passions that brought them into education in the first place. I've identified that the central discussion at the moment is about emotional education, how these things can impact on children's ability to learn in schools. Now, in my previous blogs, I've again, by purpose, kept it to 3 minutes, roughly about that, so that they're small and easy to watch, so don't drag on. A bit like just picking up an apple rather than sit down to have a full meal. This one, by purpose, I'm going to let it extend a bit more because I think there's some more important information I want to get across. And it's this, challenging behavior, which is an aspect of emotional education. But I guess it makes sense to more or less identify what is challenging in the behavior itself. The word challenging, please, is very important. You observe that I have not used the word impossible. It is not impossible behavior, it's challenging behavior. But what makes it challenging is that it's not really the norm, the expected. It is out of place or it's unwanted. And there are a vast range of issues that could trigger these challenging behaviors. A lot of it, quite often, like I've identified in my previous blogs, stem from children's social lives, their home lives. And without really understanding what these issues are, it becomes very difficult to do that thing government keeps advertising about, that is inspire pupils to learn. I mean, truly, if you think about it, to inspire somebody, you need to know that person. You need to know what the triggers are in their lives. You need to know what excites them. You need to know what makes them happy. I could tell you one thing central, a word that I have not used up to now is care, and really plays a huge part in getting schools to work very well. But sticking to our point here on challenging behavior, I would like to highlight a few things. First of all, one of the reasons I got into education was because my mother was a teacher. Now, she was not in any way a 2-1 or first class student, but she was by far one of the most effective teachers I've ever seen in my life. And I'm not saying this because she was my mother, but because genuinely her practices were absolutely outstanding. And the reason that was, she went the extra mile. She went out to find out what made the children happy, what mattered to them. Now that's the key. I'm going to repeat this again. What mattered to the children. And then she tried to provide for those needs. Once you can do that, you will find that children will do the work and not you. Therefore, this one of the things that educators are finding now in schools, that it says that children are reluctant, pupils are reluctant to work. They have to be spoon-fed. By and large, again, if you find out the things that are important for them and fulfill those needs, you'll find they will be enthused, they'll be happy to work for you, they'll be go out their way to try and please you. Life becomes a lot easier. It is not a magic bullet. It's hard work, but you get there. Now, I would like to share a few examples. I was once in a school in North London, and what I found was that the school had spent £43 million building the structures, the new buildings, the car park, the tennis courts. It was still, to be honest with you, a building site, a lot of work still being done. Now, what was interesting was that a lot of the pupils were spending so much energy destroying it. And I sat down in an assembly by senior leadership to the pupils, saying to them, look, what is the matter with you people? We spent £43 million building a state-of-the-art education facility for you. You should be appreciating it, not destroying it. And indeed, the pupils were destroying it. They were run up to the wall, flying cake, and shattering the plaster, damaging property. It was just probably one of the worst case scenarios of the schools I've ever come across in my life. So I spoke to several students and I said, look, what's the problem? Do you not appreciate what is being put in place for you? Now, what was resoundingly response from the pupils is this. They felt that the school did not care. By school, they meant the adults, the leadership team, government to some extent. They felt nobody understood them. And one of the things they brought up was this. They come from very poor backgrounds. Some of them were migrants from very challenging situations in their previous lives. They live in houses that are rented or temporary accommodation. Some were looked after children. And so when school management leadership were talking about £43 million, to them was a laughable situation. They could not relate that £43 million to themselves. They could not equate. It was something that happens to other people. It wasn't real. It was like, to them, it was like a film. And they expressed this fact. They said, well, no, really, no. If you come to my house, you see the squalid place I live in, the water wasn't good. And to try and then tell me this £43 million is there for me, it didn't make sense. To them, it's like, well, why are you spending £43 million on this building when it could better spend doing something else to provide for my needs? The things that made me feel safe and comfortable and happy. Therefore, one of these tendencies to go and build a state-of-the-art academy, I have been in many schools and I found it doesn't necessarily work. It certainly creates a conducive learning environment, but doesn't really always address the central issue for a lot of the pupils, i.e., do you care for me? And if you do, I will work. And if you don't, I will challenge you. Again, I give you such another example. I have a very good friend of mine I worked with. I used to work in a law firm before going into teaching. Now, he himself identified that as a pupil, he was extremely very difficult to cope with. Now, what unbeknown to me was that he had tried to become a teacher prior to I went into teaching. And subsequently, a few years later after I became a teacher, he tried to go back into teaching again. And one thing that pulled him out in each case was he felt that he came close enough to behave in a professional way towards the pupil out of anger at their behavior. And he felt that he was not prepared to do the nurturing aspects of teaching, that, you know, to getting to know them on a personal basis. He felt it wasn't really his cup of tea. Now, this person, I'm telling you, is extremely very bright, extremely very bright. One of the most talented IT professionals I know. But somewhere along the lines, from being a very mischievous pupil to this point in his life where he's an outstanding IT personnel, something changed. Obviously, there's a whole range of things that I can't even go into, but clearly it shows that we can't dismiss pupils' behavior as this child is terrible, which is one of the things that good educators try and point out to students, that there's a difference between the child and the behavior. And that's one of the important things that, as a new educator or for somebody trying to go into education, you got to hold in the back of your mind that there is a difference between that child in front of you and the behavior. If you can make the distinction, then doing the leap from being a trainee teacher to become a teacher, or from going from thinking about being a teacher to become a trainee teacher, becomes a lot easier. It wouldn't be easy, but it becomes easier. Now, these are examples of things that are challenging, not impossible, challenging. And indeed, if I step back again to, if I use my mother's example, when she used to go the extra mile for many people, and when I was younger, I used to think, what are you doing? You know, why are you picking up the phone, calling parents later in the evening, trying to get them to address their children's behavior, or going to their houses to talk to the parents to try and help them find solutions? Regrettably, my mother passed away a few years ago, and it wasn't until I saw all her former pupils going back 20-something years, all came back. Some of them are working professionals now, and speaking of their passion and love for her and how she turned their lives around. It was nothing to do with the maths or the English or the subject matters. No, it was to do the care aspect, going up to that word care, because she demonstrated that care and understanding of their challenges in their personal lives and tried to provide the need. They went out to the way to work for her. So they felt that she inspired them. Again, getting back to that government's word, choice of words, inspire pupils whenever they're doing their recruitment. So what I want you to reflect on is, when you hear the words challenging behavior, remember that it's not impossible behavior. It's just simply a behavior, a set of behaviors that come about by issues that may be unbeknown to you. But if you dig into it, you find that it's probably something that you can sympathize for, and you can go the extra mile to work for, to provide in the needs of these children, these pupils, whoever those faces are in front of you. Thank you for listening. Please join me at ecowa.com, and I hope you join me in the next vlog. Take care. Bye-bye.